Hey guys, happy 2016 and welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make an oversized sweater which also doubles as an off-the-shoulder top. Grab your warm fabric and let's get started. To create this jumper, you can either trace the sleeves and bodice of a hoodie or jumper you already own, or you can make a pattern from scratch, which I'll show you now. To create my bodice pattern, I drew a rectangle that was half the width of my jumper, added the armhole curve and the neck hole curve, and I was supposed to slant the shoulders of my jumper, but I didn't the first time, and so I ended up with this horrific looking jumper. But I'll show you how I fixed that later on in the video, and if you want the actual measurements for the pattern, go ahead and look at my blog, MadebySimstatic.wordpress.com. So putting this jumper together is really easy. You want to take your front and back pieces and lay them right sides together and sew along the shoulder seams. So this next part is optional, but I wanted to have a slight V-neck along my neckline. So when I was making my pattern pieces, I cut the front so that it would have this V-neck, and I also created a pattern for the triangle which will be used in a contrast fabric. Literally, to put this together, I placed the triangle right sides together with the jumper fabric and kind of eased it into place. The two curves, or two edges shall we say, are not the same shape, so it requires a bit of manipulation while sewing, which I'm trying to show you here. The next thing to do is to attach the sleeves. Now you can do this in the same way that I show you in my DIY shift dress video, but I think that it actually looks nicer if you use set-in sleeves. So I've linked a tutorial down below so you can learn how to do that. Onto the neckline, add cuffs. Now cuffs are really easy to do. Measure the width of your wrist of your jumper and measure the bottom width of your jumper and create a band that is this width long, plus an inch for seam allowance. Now fold the band in half and sew along one side with half an inch of seam allowance. Now cut off the excess seam allowance and fold your band inwards like this, and you now have a cuff. This next step of attaching the cuffs assumes that you've already sewn up the side seam of your sleeve. So simply fit on the cuff and make sure that the raw edges of the sleeve and of the cuff match up. Pin the cuff around the seam and make sure the seams match up, and then pin all around and sew with a zigzag stitch. Repeat this for the bottom cuff of the jumper, and you can also repeat this for the neck hole, but for the neck hole instead I decided to use a kind of binding because I preferred that effect. This binding was literally a 4-inch wide strip where I had folded the fabric in on itself in half, ironed it, and folded the quarters in as well and ironed those, so I had something that resembled bias binding. I then took this binding, opened up one side, and placed this one edge right sides together around my neck hole and pinned all the way around. When I had pinned around the entire neckline, I left the two ends slightly free, cut off the excess, and then placed the two ends close together and pinned them so that I could sew this bit closed. So that's the seam you can see here. I cut off the excess fabric and then I folded the bias binding along the lines that I ironed, and so that gave me this effect where I had clean edges on the inside and smooth looking edges on the outside, and I pinned this bit down, and I did this all the way around the neckline and then sewed along this line with a straight stitch. I hope you guys can see why I like the finish of this particular neckline binding more than the cuff finish. If you did attempt this jumper, you are now DIY done. But if you guys remember earlier, I said that I made a couple of mistakes, and if you're paying carefully attention during this video, you'll realise that I did not edit these in the order that I filmed this video. So here's the mistakes I made and how I fixed them. So my main issue with this was how tent-like it looked. And originally I tried to mitigate this by widening the neck hole, but that wasn't actually the problem. The problem was that I did not cut the shoulders on a slant, and because I cut them in such a squarish shape, it just pulled the rest of my top out of proportion. So I basically had to deassemble my garment, and that took a long time. I had to cut away the shoulder seams and the side seams and undo the neck hole binding as well, so don't make this mistake. Because I didn't cut my original pattern pieces with slanted shoulders, I had to recompensate for this by adding in slanted inputs at the shoulders. So I created 2 trapezia, roughly the right slant, and I sewed these in at the shoulder seams. So this is the jumper with the shoulder implants, and it's quite a contrast from the tent of ugly. Then I pretty much proceeded with the tutorial as I showed you, and I ended up with this jumper that I absolutely love. It turns out the wider neckline actually means I can wear this as an off-the-shoulder top, so it's even more versatile with this small mishap that turned into something better. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching this tutorial as much as I've enjoyed making it, and if you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. I don't know if you guys want to see any more wintry themed tutorials, so if you do, please let me know in the comments below. What's special about DIYing clothes is the uniqueness of every garment made. So that was one of the things I wanted to celebrate in my DIY haul of 2015. So in this haul, I'm going to be showing you some of the things that I haven't put up on YouTube, telling you some of the stories behind these items, and telling you some of the mistakes that I've made along the way. I hope this encourages you to DIY life, and have a happy January. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.